Incursion's supposed to be good, but most known streamers ditch very quickly, even faster than best rate. It's not an incursion problem, it's a PoE problem. I've been wanting to make a video about it for a really long time, but I don't know how to present it in a way that it won't get shat on for being negative. But PoE has a serious problem at the moment. I thoroughly enjoy the current form of Path of Exile. But Path of Exile has an increasing problem with retention, and it's getting increasingly bad from a streamer point of view, which streamers aren't necessarily important, but they're a good metric for the game, and they're also a good way of keeping people invested in the game. Obviously, there's loads of people who don't play based on when streamers play, but, you know, a lot of my viewers, you know, will stay interested in PoE even after they've stopped playing because they're watching me who may be playing, for example. But yeah, no, it's been an issue for a few leagues now. So Incursion had massive streamer drop-off. Bestiary had massive streamer drop-off. Abyss had big streamer drop-off. I think Harby was the last league which really had a like a solid retention to it, and they keep doing these flashback events, and I'm not actually sure how good the flashback events are long term, and I think the flashback events might be part of the problem. And that seems weird, right? Because I love flashback, and flashback is some of the most fun parts of the game, and it's the bit which a lot of streamers complain that there isn't enough racing. On a Baycast a while ago, I think it was towards the end of Abyss League or during Abyss League, I said part of the reason why I didn't enjoy Abyss so much was I ruined Abyss League by playing the flashback in Harby and pushing as hard as I did in Harby. So Harby main league, I got 98 on hardcore, died 98.5, and then in the flashback I grinded to 100 in a group. And Harby gave you insane accessibility to all the top-end content, and flashback gave you insane accessibility to all the top-end content. And the problem we have with the way that the Atlas currently works, especially for the average dude, if you're dedicated and you know what you're doing, you can set up your Atlas very quickly, but the average dude takes a very long time to set up their Atlas. So you spend a really long time setting up your Atlas. The Atlas is the core part of the game for most people. Let me just turn this off. It's the core part of the game for most people. And then you go into the flashback resets your Atlas again, which is the core part of the game for most people. And then you're experiencing a more extreme version, a more hectic version of the game through the flashback. And then you're experiencing PoE technically at its best. You're experiencing it with all the flavors. It'd be like, imagine if you were in an ice cream shop and you were given a plain vanilla ice cream, and you can put any topping on it you want, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then next time you go, like, no, you can only have plain vanilla now. It's like, oh, I missed some of that spice. But at the same time, it's not sustainable, because if you always have that, you get sick of it. So it's about choosing when or not to have it. So then Harvey was like this insane accessibility. Everyone could do the top-end content, everyone, whatever. Then we went into Abyss. Abyss was an okay league. Some people really liked it. I thought it was a bit dull. But a big reason why I didn't enjoy Abyss as much was because of the flashback. So we went from that into Bestiary. Bestiary was a very polarizing league, and we had the massive flashback in Bestiary. A lot of people really enjoyed the Bestiary flashback. Then from that we went into Incursion. And I think a big part of the problem is with how quickly we accelerate through early progression. The fact that gear progression stops so early. Yoji recently made a video about this. The fact that most people get bored of their character around about level 90, and you get a lot of people who get bored of their characters before they fully establish their Atlas. And then we then just get a new flashback event. It's all fun and shiny for a bit. Seems super fun. You go into it, you maybe push really hard, you go super casual. And I just feel like there's a serious pacing issue with Path of Exile at the moment. I think the league structure is part of the problem. I think the race structure is part of the problem. But I think a lot of it is down to the gear progression and the XP. And I've been wanting to make a video saying that and trying to give a solution to it for a few leagues now. But it's really hard to actually present that point of view without someone just going, it's so negative, or you can't have an opinion because you're part of the 1%. How can the average dude possibly compete? There was a guy in my chat, I vividly remember this has stuck with me. There was a guy in my chat who said that Path of Exile is ruined for him because it's balanced around people like Ziz. And how can he ever compete if the game is balanced around Ziz? And I was like, what do you mean by that? I said, well, dude, the league is nearly over and I only just got my headhunter and I only play like an hour a week or something. And he said this 1 month into Incursion. 1 month into Incursion, the guy had a headhunter playing only a few hours a week and he felt like he'd failed. Like, he felt like the game was failing him. And at that point, I was just like, I cannot fucking relate to anyone who plays this game anymore. Because everyone's own personal like expectation of what the game is fucked. Some people think that PoE is only PoE if you're farming Uberlab. Like, day one, guy in chat literally saying that right now. If you're not getting there straight away instead of the enchant, it's dead. If you're not farming, you know, Minnow within 2 hours of league start, it's dead. And then you have the person who achieves everything they want to achieve. They have the most expensive items in the game a month in of a 3-month league. And they're like, oh, the league's dead now, the league's over. It's just like, yeah, it's how do you even touch that? Like, from a developer point of view, how do you go about touching PoE? They need to nerf the XP, or I feel like they need to nerf the XP. But when they last nerfed the XP, there was a massive hissy fit. They nerfed it just after Harvey, and people went fucking crazy. Even, like, the top streamers, apparently, it was for the streamers, they didn't like it. Like, Ziz got really upset that they were nerfing XP, because he was like, oh, well, you're nerfing my competition. It doesn't affect me, because I play so much, I'll still win the races. And it's just like, what the fuck do they do? Do you just keep speeding up the game? But you can't keep making the game faster, but then having the same league structure. Because that doesn't make sense, right? Like, you pick a league structure, the 3-month league structure worked, and that worked for them with the pace that the game was at. But if the idea is we need to keep making PoE faster and faster and faster, well, then at some point you're going to have to revisit the 3-month league structure. But to then do that, you then put way more emphasis on GGG to make more content, which means they need a way bigger team, or they need to rush more content, making the leagues less enjoyable. So then if the leagues become super short, like if a league went from 3 months to 1 month or 2 months, and they're just pumping out more and more content, the leagues are going to feel more stale, they're going to have less to offer, people will have more resets, more restarts, and they'll get burnt out even quicker. So it's from a design and balance point of view, it's incredibly difficult. Incredibly difficult. I would like to say that one of the best things for them to be would be to either keep the 3-month cycle or slow down the cycle, but then slow down the progression to match that better. Because it's not sustainable to constantly promote faster and faster and faster, but then not change the league structure. Now, I currently enjoy PoE, right? And that's the thing that people often forget. Like, I enjoy current PoE. I enjoy it a lot, but you can't pretend there isn't an increasing drop-off when it comes to the content creators time after time after time. And does that matter? Like, at the end of the day, does it matter if your content creators stop playing PoE? I would argue it is, because content creators are what keeps games relevant, especially with how the way that, like, modern gaming works and how Twitch-centric it is. You know, if you were to look at, you know, I always talk about World of Warcraft. If you were to just, like, delete a few World of Warcraft streamers, the relevance of that game is completely, like, you know, crumbles. Like, if Asmon suddenly quits, you know, or went... Asmon, for some reason, you know, he got hit on the head and decides he enjoys Guild Wars, for example, then that completely changes the entire power structure of the game company and everything. It's really interesting. And it's a particularly difficult thing, and I don't really know what to suggest, to be honest. But I think that eventually... It's not like... And that's the other thing. That, like, a lot of the time people say, oh, but Tarke, you're such you know, so complainy, you're so negative. And it's not necessarily that it's an issue now, but it's an issue I could see being a problem a year from now or 6 months from now. And it's something which probably should be considered at some point, because if you never consider it, it will then eventually become a problem. And I think that is intrinsically, it all goes back to Flame Dash. That is why they've never rebalanced Flame Dash, because I think they know that, and they know that that's a problem, and that's why they've never normalized mobility and movement speed. Because if they were to bring up everything to shield charge and Deadeye level, if they were to bring everything up to that, they're committed to it. They're then committed to that point, and then they have to fully embrace it. And they don't want to nerf it, because if they nerf it, they'll upset everyone. So they've just left it super imbalanced. And that's why we have, you know, Queen of the Forest, Deadeye movement, shield charge movement. And on the other hand, you've got fucking shitty staff movement and lightning warp scaling with movement speed and needing a 4-link, Flame Dash having limited charges, and it's a really awkward, you know, thingy. But yeah, a Megal, ones will never be popular. And I mean, races are really popular. You can't say that races aren't popular, and a big reason why races are popular is going back to the content creators. Race is a great spectator sport. And spectator sports is really important in video games. It keeps people interested. So you can have people who, you know, StarCraft is the best example. Very few people actually played StarCraft, but a lot of people watched StarCraft and kept people interested in the game. You get people who watch, you know, Dota tournaments long after they've quit playing Dota, just because, you know, they're interested in the competitive scene, or same with League of Legos. And then they'll get hyped up about a tournament, they'll then go back to them playing the game, or it makes them want to try the game. Having that spectator element is very important to keeping people invested in your game. So then when you do come out with an expansion or a big, you know, release, people are like, yes, I want to play this now. And that's the thing. It's like I have this very cyclical relationship with World of Warcraft, and I always mention World of Warcraft. So my two main games are PoE and WoW. I'm obsessed with the WoW lore, and because of that, I'm subscribed to like 5 different WoW lore YouTubers. And even though my usual cycle is I'll play the first patch, maybe the first 2 patches of an expansion, quit and then play the last patch, I keep watching the videos. And then when I watch the videos, and then I listen to the music in the background, I'm like, shit, I want to play fucking WoW now. And I resubscribe. And so many people have that with PoE. It's like, they'll be a fan of Rise, or they'll be a fan of Mathil, they'll be a fan of me or whatever, and they could have stopped watching the leak, but then they'll watch that one video and they're like, fuck, that looks amazing, and it makes them want to get back in there. So yeah, I think it is. I think it definitely is something they do need to address at some point, which is the massive streamer drop off, which does keep happening. GG needs to add something like Mythic Plus and do something similar to the, and that would be cool. I think that was one of the best things they ever did to WoW. Having a greater Rift style system, people, you know, say they would really like that infinite scaling. I actually think that hardcore is a detriment to PoE. I think hardcore is actually holding PoE back. This is an unrelated topic, but infinitely scaling content doesn't really make sense in a game with a hardcore game mode. It doesn't. From a softcore point of view, it's perfect. And I do sometimes think that they're actually held back a little bit. Obviously, I like hardcore, I enjoy hardcore. But I think from a design point of view, how do you market infinitely scaling maps, like an endless ledge? How would endless ledge work in hardcore? Because in softcore, endless content makes perfect sense. Because it's just like, well, you just keep going, keep getting harder and harder and harder and harder, and it's all about going until you absolute drop. You can't ever compete like that in hardcore. Because in hardcore, it's like, okay, I'm trying to get this world record, I've just got to push, and then just sacrifice the character. But we're in this issue with PoE right now, where the characters are disposable. It's the gear which is the actual loss. And that's this really weird thing we're in with PoE right now, with how rapid character progression is, like how quickly you can get up to, you know, low 80s, and you can, you know, you'll regularly see like Mathil killing Uber Elder or whatever, and he's like, I've played this character for 19 hours, and it's like, is that really what the life cycle of a character should be? Yes, obviously that's someone who's very good at the game, and very experienced at the game, twinking out and stuff. But yeah, we're in this really awkward situation where the characters are disposable, but the gear is the good thing. So then how would that work in a hardcore setting? If you say that, well, it's a hardcore setting, but it's a special, like, server where it's not actually hardcore, like, you don't actually die, well, then what's the point? It's not hardcore. Why would the hardcore players engage with it? So yeah, it's a weird thing. Like, I really don't envy the GGG balance team, because they have to try and balance a game around people like Ziz, around random dude who plays 1 hour a week and complains that he got a headhunter in a month, balanced around hardcore, and balanced around softcore, and trade, and people who don't trade. Like, the power creep of trade is insane. It's really, really weird. Would I swap to softcore? If they made a competitive mode, which I genuinely found enjoyable, I would probably swap to softcore SSF. But I can't enjoy softcore with trade. I don't know, and this is another... I for some reason, I find PoE meaningless if it's not hardcore. Because how the difficulty of PoE works, there's challenging content in PoE, and the challenging content is some bosses, and then the super rippy maps. Like, the super rippy maps. Crazy, you know, tier 16s, all the really scary mods on them or whatever. But the vast majority of PoE isn't difficult. You can die. Like, people don't seem to understand that, like, you can die to content which is easy just because it happens. It's like if you play Mario every day, it's not like it's difficult to make a jump. Sometimes you just don't make the jump, right? Sometimes you just make a mistake. Sometimes you have a lapse of judgment. It's like, oh, whatever. You know, just because you didn't make that jump in Mario doesn't mean that jump is impossible. It just means that you fucked up every now and again. And that fucking up and the restarting, that's what keeps me interested in PoE. So I don't know, maybe with some infinitely scaling content, which was consistently challenging, I would kind of enjoy it. I think that you could also end up in an issue, depending on how it starts and how it works, where it's like the first 10 minutes of your infinitely scaling content is face roll and really boring. And then you're in this really weird disconnect where it's like easy, then just like unkillable, unstoppable, just dead. It's a really hard thing to... Because we already have the stupid bullshit one-shots in PoE. So then if you had infinitely scaling content, realistically all we would see... Because we wouldn't see builds face-tanking it. We would just see even more God-go-fast builds who just off-screen really hard. Because it's very easy in PoE currently, if you have the currency and you have the time and you have an idea of what you're doing, to just fully max out a character and just never get hit 99.9% of the time. And I feel like that's what will probably happen with infinitely scaling content. It would be lots of people just playing builds which off-screen really fucking hard, and then there'll be that one guy who plays the build which is immune to fizz and LE damage, and plays it all the way through until he dies to a bleed. And it's like, oh, you know. So, I don't even actually know how competitive infinitely scaling would be. Because it would be... It would just boil down to super derivative content. Like, when it comes to people actually competing with that, it would just be like, hey, you either go this way, where you're immune to all physical and elemental damage, and just avoid the one type of damage over time which can kill you. Or you go this way, and you just don't get hit, and you just off-screen everything. You can add mechanics to the monsters to solve that. Yeah, but then that goes back to, do you then add monsters which break that paradigm, which are only accessible in this content? What if those new super challenging monsters then ruin how the core PoE works? Like, how does super difficult monster work in infinitely scaling mode, which is actually a way to stop the fizz and LE immune builds, but then doesn't curb stomp everyone in tier 2 maps? Right? And even if you added super scary mechanics to a monster, who cares if you can kill it 2 screens away? Like what mechanic can you actually put on a monster without giving it invulnerabilities or whatever, or it summons walls which block projectiles? where you can't just be like, oh, I just arced and killed it like 2 screens away. Or I just chain forked tornado shot at it, or chain forked Ellie headed it, you know. And then how do you have that monster which then doesn't instantly fucking destroy everything which is Cyclone, you know, or whatever. Nerf projectiles. I mean, then chain will become top dog. And then you've nerf projectiles, but then you've completely destroyed everyone who just plays mapping. You've killed everyone's favorite kind of build. Like, they killed AoE, and how angry everyone was about the AoE change. Congratulations, you've now killed projectiles, and Reddit hates you now. And like, you're talking to a community who had a nervous breakdown because they wanted to slightly nerf power charges. Like, the outcry on the Frenzy power charge change was so loud and had so much vitriol, they went back on it. And that was a minor change which did, like, nothing. People often say that, like, it's GGG, they don't give a fuck about what the players want. If they want to nerf something, they'll nerf it. And it's like, yeah, they do sometimes, with, like, Volpact. But with small things, they're like, I don't know, is it worth the aggro? Is it worth the hate? Nah, fuck it. Yeah, it's... At some point I'm going to do a big... Yeah, as Grim saying, I'm going to do a big Bay class on it. But, it is an incredibly difficult thing. It is incredibly difficult. And the solution really isn't as easy as people make it out to be. And then you'll get a lot of people just like, well, it's I don't see the problem now, so the discussion isn't worth having. People are incredibly against discussion. People hate discussion. People fucking hate discussion. Because they're just like, oh, it's unnecessary because I don't see its value currently, so we can't even have the conversation. It's a really interesting thing. It's the kind of thing that I would love to talk to Chris about, you know, over a couple of beers. Like, just sat down, just have a private conversation, like, no PR, no, like, this isn't going out to YouTube, no nothing, completely private. Just like, hey, like, what's your actual opinion on it? Because I'm really curious in what his point of view is, considering, he's often stated that his, like, personal preference of PoE is completely different to what we have right now. Like, you know, on Bakos you mentioned the idea of a director's cut of PoE. Like, the Chris Wilson director's cut of PoE is this insane difficulty Diablo 2 fucking hard mode game, which no one wants to fucking play. Like, 2% of the current PoE population would play it. It'd be like Carve, and that'll be it, you know. It's really interesting. Really interesting. But, you know, I'm going to upload that all onto YouTube. So I'm Tarke. Thank you for listening to that rant. Have a good day. Bye-bye. But, yeah. I'll put that onto YouTube. I think that was interesting-ish.
This ain't for the conscious. This is for the mud-made monsters who grew up on legends from out of Yonkers, influenced by
Content, boys.